Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. So, as some of you may have seen on my last video, I've been experiencing a little bit of algae on my sand bed that's not crazy, but it's driving me crazy. So my plan is to introduce some macroalgae to help consume all the nutrients that nuisance algae that I don't want in my tank is consuming and living off of. So I'm on my way to my local hardware store to get a soap dish. Someone went shopping. And that soap dish is where I plan on housing the macroalgae that'll help consume all the nutrients that nuisance algae has been consuming in my display tank. Why in my display tank? Well, I don't have a sump. I have a canister filter, and I don't have enough light in that canister filter to help grow algae. I'm sure a lot of you out there are probably having a similar issue. What is causing all of that nuisance algae to grow in your tank? Well, you can pretty much boil it down to there being excess nutrients, whether that be fish waste, decaying fish food, potentially decaying invertebrates, or actual fish themselves. There's some sort of nutrients that are feeding that algae. And so what you can do to combat that algae is introduce your own algae. Good algae, macroalgae, algae that you've purposefully introduced that you can contain and you can control, that will help consume the same nutrients that nuisance algae is consuming. That way, that nuisance algae has nothing to eat. Your macroalgae is eating it, and as long as you keep it under control, you keep it trimmed, and you keep it in a place that you can control, it won't take over your main display tank. Now, the reason why I also settled on adding it to my main display tank was because my main plan kind of fell through. I'll show you. So the old plan was to use one of my old overflow filters, but of course, just my luck, it doesn't work. My original plan was to hang this over the back of my aquarium, and as you can see, there's nothing on the inside. No filtration, no mechanical media, no biological media, no nothing. Completely empty. My plan was to stuff this with that algae. So this algae was to go right inside this filter, and with a lid on it, it would have been nice and secure. And I was going to install one of the same lights that I have underneath there, right underneath the lid, to give it some natural source of light. But unfortunately, as soon as I plugged it in, I realized it wasn't working. So that's when we went to plan B, which is, you guessed it, the soap dish. So right now, So right now, I'm not going to breathe through my nose. I've got this soap dish in a mixture of half vinegar and half water so that I can get all the impurities out and I can clean it with a toothbrush before putting it into my main display. For all the haters that don't believe me, there's the vinegar, it's pretty much empty. Mixing, I can't breathe, the fumes are brutal, but I'll show you what it's like once it's cleaned, and we'll put it into my main display tank and get some Chaeto algae in there. Like I mentioned, that Chaeto algae is going to be coming from my copepod tank, which means that it's going to be full of copepods, hopefully copepod eggs, and it'll give the copepods a natural place to live and reproduce in my main display tank, which is amazing because my Mandarin Gertrude is going to be stoked. So now I'm going to grab a little bit of water, some Chaeto, to transfer over to the main display. So this is our algae that we're going to be adding. Our macroalgae that we'll be using is called Chaeto algae. Chaeto algae is a macroalgae, and like I mentioned, what we're going to be using this for is to consume all the nutrients that all this excess, what I'm going to call nuisance algae, is consuming in my tank. So you can see all these small little pockets of green, a couple of like these really cool neon orange algae, which, you know, they look pretty cool, but I don't want them in here. They're going to start competing with other things for nutrients in my tank, which I don't want. I want to control my environment. So what I'll be using is my own Chaeto algae. And for those of you that haven't seen a soap dish, this is a soap dish. This is what a soap dish looks like. You can buy it for $3, $4, $5 at your local hardware store. Really simple. I'll just be placing this in the back of my tank. It's not going to be pretty, but at this point, I'm still growing everything out. I'm not really going for aesthetics. I'm going to be practical, and I want to get rid of all of this nuisance algae. The best way to do it right now, in my opinion, instead of dosing all kinds of things that I don't want to be dosing in my tank, is just put in a natural macroalgae that will control the nutrient consumption in my tank. I can control how this grows, I can cut it, I can groom it, and it's not going to affect anything in my tank. So what I'll be doing is slowly acclimating it using some salt water from this tank, just in case there are any slight parameter differences between the tank that it was living in the back, where the copepods are, and my main display tank. Now that the macroalgae, the chaeto algae, is acclimated, what I'm going to do is pour out this water, so we're not mixing water from aquarium to aquarium. Capture all that algae that I like. Now we can grab our algae, get it nice and spread out in here so the light can hit it all evenly and it can grow evenly. Shove that out, and we'll just put it in our tank. I'm pretty happy with that. Check it out. So I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I must say it looks a little better than I was expecting, and I'm very hopeful it'll do the job that I'm planning on it doing. Let's get rid of all this nuisance algae and have a thriving tank. If you guys liked what you learned today, like this video. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to learn anything new, and subscribe if you want to keep up with me. I'll put some updates up on this tank real soon.